My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 32 years old the morning my mother rang my doorbell for the first time in 14 years. She stood on my porch holding a leather folder, smiled like we had eaten lunch together the week before, and quoted the price of my own house at me the way you would read a bill out loud. $170,000.
That is what is fair, she said.
I had never given my mother this address. I had never given her my phone number, my town, or my name on a mailbox.
She had all of it anyway.
By the end of that year, my mother would put a price on raising me. A judge would read her handwriting out loud in open court. And my father, the quiet one, the harmless one, would do something on the courthouse steps that not even my mother saw coming. Let me take you back to that Saturday morning in March, and the sound of a doorbell I never gave anyone the right to ring. She looked good. That was the first thing I noticed, and I hated that I noticed it. Diane Bennett, 58 years old, hair set, coat pressed, standing on my porch in a small town 2 hours from where I grew up. I kept the screen door latched between us. Some part of me had rehearsed this moment for 14 years, and every version of me was smarter than the version who opens the door. Claire, she said, warm as a bank teller closing out a register. You look thin. Is that stress? Small business will do that. I asked how she found me. She laughed like the question was cute.
Found you, honey.
I never lost you. She named my bookkeeping business.
Cute name, she said.
I saw the ad you did last fall with the bakery girl, the one with the tattoos. And you have a gray cat now. Sits in the front window. My mouth went dry. She kept going, pleasant as a weather report. You bought this place 3 years ago. County website, honey. It is all public. I keep up. 14 years of unlisted numbers, of paying rent under other people's names, of checking the parking lot before I got out of my car. She had been watching over me the entire time, the way a lender watches collateral. She patted the folder against her palm twice, soft as a heartbeat. I did not drive 2 hours to fight, she said. I came with an offer. A fair one. Family fare. Behind her at the curb, my father's old truck sat idling with a shape hunched behind the wheel that did not wave and did not look at me. Whatever was in that folder, they had planned it together. To explain what was in that folder, I have to take you back to my childhood town and a spiral notebook with a green cover that lived on top of our refrigerator. My mother called it the family book. It came down whenever money moved, which was always. New sneakers for gym class went in the book. A school trip went in the book with a packed lunch itemized separately. When I was 14 and got my first job scooping ice cream, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table and explained gently, like a benefits coordinator, that I was old enough now to contribute. Room and board, she called it. $40 a week in an envelope, due every Friday. She wrote a receipt for every envelope in that green notebook, date and amount, in handwriting so neat it looked printed. I used to think every family had a book like that. Then I ate dinner at a friend's house and nobody handed me an invoice, and something in my stomach shifted sideways and never quite shifted back. The only place the math stopped was my grandmother Ruth's kitchen, 3 streets over, where the tea was too sweet and nothing cost anything. She would pour me a cup from her good china and say, "You are not a bill, sweetheart. You are a girl." I did not understand until years later why she said it like an apology. My mother was not cruel the way movies show cruel. She never hit me. She never screamed. She just kept the ledger, patiently, line after line, year after year, the way other mothers keep photo albums. And here is the question I would carry all the way into a courtroom. What kind of life teaches a woman to do that? The spring I turned 18, my mother laid out my future at that same kitchen table, the green book open beside her like scripture. I would stay home. I would work full-time. The night shift paid better. My paychecks would go toward what she called the raising balance. 18 years of food, clothes, heat, and patience. all of it lovingly documented. College was, in her words, a luxury item, and luxury items were for people with a zero balance. I said no. It was the first flat no of my life, and it landed in that kitchen like a dropped plate.
She did not yell.
She recalculated. She explained that ungrateful girls who walk away from family debts find out fast what the world charges for the same services. And my father, my quiet father, who could fix any machine at the plant and could not look his own wife in the eye, stood in the doorway with his coffee and said the sentence that would follow me for 14 years. Just give her what she wants, Claire. It is easier. That night, I packed 2 duffel bags. I took my work shoes, my birth certificate, and the $1,100 I had hidden in a tampon box, because even at 18 I knew my privacy had a search history. I walked to the bus depot in the dark and took the first bus heading anywhere. I watched my hometown slide past the window like a place I had only read about. I want to be honest about what I felt, because it was not triumph. It was arithmetic. I had done the math my mother taught me and concluded I could not afford to be her daughter. It took 14 years to build a life she could not touch. I believed I had. Here's the part where I am supposed to say I struggled, and I did, but I will spare you the violin. I waited tables at a diner and stocked shelves overnight at a grocery store, sometimes both in the same day. I slept in a rented room where the radiator had 2 settings, off and unbearable. At 20, I started night classes at community college. At 22, I had an associate's degree in accounting and a discovery about myself. I am freakishly good at making numbers tell the truth. Give me a shoebox of crumpled receipts and a terrified small business owner, and in a week I will hand back order, and order is just another word for peace. At 26, I opened my own bookkeeping business, which is, yes, me taking the word my mother ruined and making it pay my bills. I did the books for a transmission shop, a bakery, 2 HVAC crews, a dog groomer with a cash drawer like a crime scene. The bakery belonged to Nora. She became the sister I never got issued, and I kept everything. Every lease, every utility bill, every bank statement from the month I turned 18, filed by year in folders with typed labels. Nora teased me once, called it my doomsday library. I told her it was a professional habit. That was a lie I believed. The truth, and it took a courtroom to teach me, is that girls who grow up itemized never stop preparing for an audit. I alphabetized my spice rack. I keep gas receipts from cars I no longer own. It looks like discipline. Hold that thought, because every page of that filing habit was about to matter more than I could have priced. My grandmother Ruth found me when I was 25, and I say found like it was hard.
She had my number the whole time.
She was just waiting until calling me would not cost me anything at home. After that, we had 2 years of Sunday phone calls. She would tell me about her tomatoes and her church friends and ask about my clients like they were characters in her stories. Near the end, she said something strange. She said, "I did it to your mother too, sweetheart. I just paid a different way." I did not push back. I wish I had. She died the spring I was 27, 81 years old, in her sleep with the radio on. At the funeral, my mother hugged everyone in the receiving line with the exact same duration. Across the casket, I caught her looking at me the way you look at a storage unit you have been paying on for years. Not with longing, with inventory. 2 weeks later, a bank officer called me. My grandmother had left a payable on death account, $20,000, designated to one name.
Mine.
He mailed the paperwork with a sticky note in careful cursive saying she had set it up 2 years earlier, in person, sharp as a tack, and had asked him twice to make sure it would go directly to me. No probate, no detours, no family discussion. "You bought this with Ruth's money," she said, and her voice dropped its warmth like a coat. And Ruth's money was my money. That woman owed me a whole life. And she skipped over me to spite me, and I am done being skipped. I said no.
Just no.
No essay attached, which for me was 14 years of therapy in a single breath. My mother looked at me for a moment, and then her face changed the way a screen changes when the power cuts. All the pleasantness gone at once. "We are not asking, Claire," she said. "We are collecting." She wedged the folder into the screen door and walked back to the truck. 30 days, she called over her shoulder, like a dentist's office confirming an appointment. If a mother you had not seen in 14 years stood on your porch with a bill for your childhood, would you have opened that screen door? For about 3 seconds that morning, I almost did. Here is what I did with the rest of that Saturday, and I am telling you the boring parts on purpose because the boring parts are what saved me. I photographed every page of her so-called agreement before I touched it with bare hands, then bagged it like leftovers. I wrote down the time she arrived, the time she left, what she said, what the truck looked like. Then I sat on my kitchen floor with the cat and shook for about 10 minutes because you can be organized and terrified at the same time. Ask any bookkeeper in April. Monday morning I called 2 law firms and hired the one that did not promise me anything. Angela Cross, civil litigation, a handshake like a stapler. She read my mother's document twice, set it down, and said, "This is a wish list, not a contract. No consideration, no signatures, no enforceable anything." Then she tapped the page and added the sentence I would repeat to myself for months. "But your mother believes it." That is the dangerous part. People who believe their own paperwork do not stop at the porch. Her instructions were simple. Do not answer calls from unknown numbers. Do not meet them alone anywhere, ever. Everything in writing. Everything saved. I told her about my filing habit, the folders by year, and she smiled for the first time in that meeting.
"Good," she said.
"You may be the first client I have ever had who overprepares." On my way out, she asked one more question, casual as a coat check. "Does anyone else in the family know your address?" I stopped with my hand on the door because the answer was my Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister, who sent me a Christmas card every year and who had never once been able to keep a secret from my mother in her life. The campaign started before the 30 days were up. That is the thing nobody warns you about. The lawsuit is the second front. The first front is the story. And my mother had a 14-year head start on the story. Aunt Patricia called me crying on a Tuesday night, and she was not acting, which is what made it awful. "How could you, Claire? Your parents are old. They sold their house because they thought she caught herself because they have nowhere to go. And you're sitting in a big house all alone." I asked her quietly what exactly my mother had told her. Patricia said my mother had shown the family a folder of receipts of everything they had sacrificed and explained that I had taken my grandmother's money meant for the family, and hidden it while they aged. The prayer chain at their church added my parents by name, and me too, the wayward daughter. Lord, soften her heart. Word travels down a county road faster than fiber optic. One of my HVAC clients, a good man with a cousin from back home, called that Friday, apologetic and wretched, and pulled his account.
"Family stuff," he said.
"Too complicated. I want you to notice what I did not do, because it cost me something. I did not post my side. I did not call the cousins with my folder of evidence. Angela had said the courtroom is the only room where the truth gets a microphone, and anywhere else it is just 2 women yelling in a parking lot. So I logged it, date, time, what was said, what it cost, and I fed the cat, and I went to bed with my heart going like a dryer with a shoe in it. A certified letter arrived from a law office back home. It said, in 3 paragraphs of Rented Thunder, that my parents demanded conveyance of the Marigold Lane property, an asset acquired with family resources, within 14 days, or litigation would follow. Angela read it out loud in her office with her glasses on the end of her nose, the way you would read a middle schooler's essay. "Acquired with family resources," she repeated. "That is a legal theory, the way a horoscope is a weather forecast." Her reply was 1 page. It said in lawyer, no. And also, keep your clients off her porch. Then she gave me the talk. I would give anything to unhear it. Even a case with no legs walks for months. Answers, discovery, depositions, motions. Her retainer was $5,000. I paid it out of my roof fund and remember thinking, there go the new shingles. The old ones will hold. Here is what I understood only later, and I want you to have it now. A meritless lawsuit is not designed to win. It is designed to bleed. Every month it stays alive costs the defendant money, sleep, and clients, and for a plaintiff like my mother, that is not a side effect. That is the product. Her lawyer billed by the hour and did not need to believe her. He needed me tired, broke, and softened enough to sign something just to make it stop. Angela called it a siege. And my mother, who once charged a 14-year-old rent in her own childhood bedroom, had always been very good at waiting out a siege. A sheriff's deputy handed me an envelope on my own welcome mat. Sorry, ma'am, he said, like he meant it, and drove off. My mother, plaintiff. Me, defendant. Count 1, unjust enrichment. Count 2, constructive trust. Count 3, promissory estoppel, a phrase that sounds like a disease horses get, and in a way it is. The complaint told a story where the $20,000 from my grandmother was family money diverted by a scheming granddaughter, where I had verbally promised my parents a home in my house someday, and where the only just remedy was for the court to declare that they held an interest in Marigold Lane. Stapled behind it was the piece that made my hands go cold, a notice of lease pendens already recorded against my deed. Angela translated. It is a flag on your title. While the case is alive, you cannot sell, cannot refinance, cannot touch your own equity without their lawsuit riding along. It does not mean they are winning. It means they have parked a car across your driveway and the tow truck takes months. I read that complaint in my kitchen table 3 times. The legal writing was all elbows and Latin, but underneath the varnish I could hear her voice in every paragraph, the bank teller warmth over the drop forged steel. The arithmetic of a woman who had waited 14 years for the account to come due. We are not asking, we are collecting. On the last page, in the list of exhibits the plaintiff intended to rely upon, Item 1 stopped my breath. Exhibit A. The family ledger. She was going to walk that green notebook into a court of law like it was proof. The copy arrived in discovery on a Thursday, scanned page by page, and I made the mistake of opening the file at lunch. There it was, the green cover, the neat columns, my whole childhood at retail. My mother had submitted it herself, voluntarily, as proof of what the complaint called a documented pattern of interfamily support. In her mind, that notebook was her Bible and her bank statement in one. Proof she had done everything right. I scrolled until the kitchen light changed and my coffee went cold. The first entry was dated the year I turned 1. Diapers, formula, a clinic visit, in that tidy printed hand, with a running balance carried forward like I had been born owing. Page after page, the sneakers, the school trip, the packed lunch, then the Friday envelopes, age 14 onward, $40 a week, each one received and logged with a little check mark of satisfaction. Room and board collected. I had to close the laptop for a while at that one. When I showed Angela, I expected a lawyer's poker face. Instead, she went quiet, turned pages, went quieter, and finally said the only sentence I ever heard her say softly. Claire, I have been doing this almost 20 years, and I have never seen a plaintiff hand me their own cross-examination. She flagged the page where a child's babysitting money was applied against interest. My mother had, at some point, started charging interest. That night it rained hard, and I could not sleep. So I did the thing I do instead of falling apart. I went to the hall closet and brought out the banker's box. One box, brown cardboard, the kind that holds a fired man's desk plant in the movies, except mine held 14 years of me. Bank statements from the month I turned 18 forward. Every deposit traceable to a pay stub with my name on it. The lease from the room, with the unbearable radiator. Tax returns, every year, every schedule. Ruth's payable on death paperwork, the bank officer's sticky note still attached. The complete closing file for Marigold Lane, every page initialed. And in a plastic sleeve at the bottom, the thing even Nora did not know I kept, a rubber-banded stack of receipts in my mother's handwriting, the Friday envelopes, age 14 to 18, which I had taken from my room the night I left, because some animal part of me already knew that someday I would need to prove what my childhood had cost. I spread it all across the kitchen table in the storm light, and something in my chest turned over slowly, like an engine catching. She wanted to fight with ledgers. Fine. I had been kept like a ledger, and I had survived into a woman who kept them better. I found a black marker and wrote on the end of the box, in block letters, my mother's name versus mine, and set it by the door like a packed suitcase. My deposition happened in a conference room at her lawyer's office, with bad coffee and a court reporter whose face never moved. The lawyer was a big, soft-voiced man who asked questions like he was helping you across the street. Isn't it true your family housed you for 18 years? Isn't it true you were supported? Wouldn't you agree the money from your grandmother was family money? Angela had trained me for 2 full evenings, and her rule was 1 sentence long. Answer the question you were asked, not the movie he is making. So I did. Yes, I lived there. Support is a word I would not use. The account was payable on death to me by name. The bank has the records. December did its best to break me, and it came closer than I like admitting. The legal bills crossed $11,000. The retainer was long gone. Invoices arrived with the Christmas cards. The lease pendants had already cost me hard money. I had been 3 weeks from refinancing into a rate that would have saved me $240 a month, and the flag on my title killed it at the bank like a hand over a candle. A second client left, kind about it, gone anyway. Nora counterpunched by bullying 2 bakery suppliers into sending me their books, which is the only reason my own lights stayed on. If you ever wonder what family actually is, it is that. One night at that same kitchen table, where all the big damage in this story kept happening, I did what I do for a living. I ran the numbers on my own mother. 2 columns on a yellow pad. Column 1, settle. Her lawyer had floated a number through Angela. $40,000, and the lawsuit disappears. The lease pendants released. Everybody goes back to their corners. Roof fund gone. Emergency fund gone. A loan against the business, probably, but over in 60 days. Column 2, fight. Angela believed we would win on the law, believed it like a carpenter believes in a level. But the honest math said months more, thousands more, no guarantee, and my mother's appetite for siege already proven across 4 decades. I sat there a long time with a pen. Then I looked at the banker's box by the door with her own math inside it, and I understood something with my whole body. $40,000 would not buy an ending. It would buy a receipt with my signature on it, proof at last that the raising balance was real. Every dollar would teach her the ledger worked. I drew a line through column 1. In the morning, Angela called before I had finished my coffee. Discovery is closed, she said, and there is nothing in it but that notebook and hurt feelings. It is time to ask the court to end this. Motion for summary judgment. I am filing tomorrow. Angela explained our motion like a woman assembling a shotgun on a clean towel. 3 parts, she said. First, the money was never theirs. A payable on death account is a legal transfer, complete the moment my grandmother signed the designation. Direct, personal, probate never touches it. We had the bank officer's affidavit. My grandmother had come in alone, sharp and deliberate, 2 years before she passed, and confirmed her wishes twice. Second, the statute of frauds. In our state, a promise about an interest in land is only enforceable in writing, and there was no writing because there was no promise, just a story told by the only person who profited from telling it. Third, unjust enrichment requires that the plaintiff conferred a benefit on the defendant. My mother never put a dollar, a nail, or an hour into Marigold Lane. What she conferred, Angela said dryly, was a childhood invoiced at market rate, and there is no cause of action for charging your kid rent and regretting the pricing. While she assembled exhibits, she asked for my grandmother's bank paperwork, and that is when I finally opened an envelope that had come with the estate documents 5 years earlier, marked in Ruth's arthritis crooked cursive, for Claire, when your mother finds you. When, not if. I had filed it unopened, because some mail you have to be strong enough for. Inside was a single note card. It was never your debt, sweetheart. It was mine. Don't pay it twice. I sat in the parking lot and read it until the words stopped swimming. My grandmother had watched the ledger being written and known exactly where it came from. All the way back, mother to mother to mother. The hearing was set for the second week of January. The courtroom smelled like radiator dust and old varnish, and the judge ran it like a man with snow in his driveway and no patience for theater. He took my mother's lawyer first. Show me the writing, counselor. There was no writing. Show me the benefit your client conferred on this specific property. The lawyer performed a long sentence about family resources and the totality of sacrifice, and the judge let it die of natural causes in the open air. Then the judge did the thing I will be describing to somebody for the rest of my life. He picked up Exhibit A, my mother's green notebook, submitted by her own attorney as proof of the family lending pattern. He turned pages with one finger, unhurried, the whole room quiet enough to hear the paper. He stopped. He read one line to himself. Then he read it out loud, slowly, into the record. Room and board, age 14, collected. He looked up, not at the lawyer, at my mother. Ma'am, this entry is in your handwriting. And my mother, I want you to understand, was not ashamed. Shame was never once in the building with her. She sat up straighter and said, "Yes, Your Honor. I have always kept fair books." She asked to say something, and the judge, God knows why, gave her a minute, and she used it to say, politely, the quiet part. "Families keep accounts, Your Honor. Children are an investment like anything else. I am not asking for charity. I am only collecting what I am owed." The radiator ticked. Somewhere behind me a stranger exhaled low, like they had been hit. The judge looked at her for a long moment and then said evenly, "Ma'am, that may be the saddest sentence anyone has said in my courtroom." The entry came down 8 days later. Summary judgment for the defendant on all 3 counts. The court found no writing, no promise, no benefit conferred, and noted, in a footnote I have read more times than I will admit, that the plaintiff's own exhibit documented not loans, but the systematic monetization of a minor child. The lease pendens was ordered released. The house was mine again, all the way through, deed to roof line. Nora brought over a cake with a house drawn on it in frosting, and I ate a slice and surprised us both by crying into it. Then Angela called with the next thing because there is always a next thing. She wanted to file a motion for sanctions, frivolous conduct. The suit had no basis in law, and her lawyer knew it, or should have. Our state lets a court make the plaintiff pay the defendant's attorney fees for exactly this. My whole body flinched. I had just spent a year being collected on, and now I would be the one holding out a bill to my own mother. I heard myself say, I do not want to become her. Angela, who bills by the 10th of an hour and does not spend words, said this. Claire, she burned more than $14,000 of your money using the courthouse as a weapon. Asking the court to hand it back is not keeping a ledger. It is putting out a fire. You are allowed to not pay for your own mugging. I told her to file it. Actual costs, not $1 more. The sanctions hearing landed in the last week of February, and my mother arrived alone. Her lawyer had moved to withdraw 2 weeks earlier. His bills, it turned out, were not getting paid either. She represented herself, brought a fresh folder, thicker, with new typed pages, and when the judge asked why she had pursued claims with no legal basis, she stood and presented what she genuinely believed was her case. The sacrifices, the ingratitude, the raising balance, arithmetic she had carried for so long it had worn grooves in her. The judge let her go longer than he had to, and I watched him understand in real time that he was not looking at a schemer. He was looking at true belief, which is worse. He cut her off, kindly, the way you would take keys from a drunk friend, and ruled. Frivolous conduct. Judgment against the plaintiff for the defendant's reasonable attorney fees. $14,500. My mother turned around right there, before the gavel noise had even settled, and addressed the gallery, 3 retirees and a man waiting on a zoning case, like they were the family assembled at Thanksgiving. "Do you see?" she said, and her voice was pure wonder, pure injury. "Do you all see what she is? She is charging her own mother." I sat very still while the room drained, that sentence ringing in me like a struck pipe, because she meant it. In whatever country my mother lives in, the victim is always her, the books are always fair, and I am forever the debtor who ran. I thought the courthouse part of my life ended in that hallway. It did not. It just changed floors. Here is everything I remember about the next 11 minutes, because I have been asked to remember them under oath, and the details do not move anymore. It was noon, late February, hard blue sky. The courthouse steps had been salted that morning, white crumbs crunching underfoot, the stone railing wearing a sleeve of old ice on its north side. Angela had gone back inside for her gloves. I stood on the 3rd step from the bottom, coat open. The cold felt clean after that courtroom, like rinsing a glass. Across the lot, I saw the truck and my father beside it in the brown coat he had owned since I was in middle school. My mother stood close to him, talking up into his face. She was not loud. That is what people get wrong about dangerous voices. The wind carried it to me in pieces the way wind does, and the pieces were these. "She took everything from us, Ray. Everything we had, everything we were owed, and you just stand there. You have always just stood there." I watched my father's shoulders climb toward his ears, his head go down, his hands open and close at his sides like something was being pumped into him a squeeze at a time. Then he came across the parking lot, not running, walking fast, wrong, a man late for something, boots hitting the salt in a rhythm I still hear in stairwells sometimes. I did not understand. That is the truth, and I have stopped apologizing for it. My father had never raised a hand to anyone in his life. He was the weather in our house, never the storm. I believed that right up until he was 3 steps away, and I saw that he was crying and that his hands were already reaching. He got me by the shoulders, my father, 61 years old, 40 years of torque wrenches in his grip, and shook me the way you would shake a vending machine that ate your last dollar. And the voice that came out of him was one I had never heard in my life. A voice with rust and tears and 40 years of swallowed everything in it, roaring. "Give it back. Give it back, Claire. Just give her." And then the world went sideways. Maybe he threw me. Maybe he lost his footing on the salt with his hand still full of my coat. The prosecutor would say it does not matter, and the law agreed. I went into the stone railing hip first, got my right hand down to catch myself, and felt the wrist go wrong on the ice-slicked edge. A deep, ugly structural pain, like a drawer forced off its rails. My elbow split on the stone. My lip caught the corner coming down. Then salt, cold sky. I was on the ground, and there were already boots and radios because we were 20 feet from a courthouse security door, and 2 deputies had watched the whole thing through the glass. They had my father face down in the salt in seconds, and he did not fight them at all. He went soft, like the string holding him up had finally been cut. And my mother. I want this part in the record of my life, My mother stood in the middle of that parking lot, 20 feet from her bleeding daughter, and she did not come to me. She shouted at the deputies. "That is my daughter. That is a family matter. This is none of your business." Family matter. I sat on the frozen steps, tasting pennies, watching my blood find spaces between the salt crystals, thinking with a calm that frightened me more than the pain. There it is. That is the whole religion right there. Then a deputy crouched into my eye line and asked the question that would split my life in half. "Ma'am, you will need to tell us whether you want to press charges." The emergency room did its patient arithmetic. Severe wrist sprain, splint, and brace for 6 weeks. 3 stitches in the elbow. A lip that made me look like I had lost a bar fight. Photographs of all of it, taken by a nurse with gentle hands and a flat cop voice. Left side, right side, ruler for scale. My father spent the night in a cell and was charged with assault, a first-degree misdemeanor, the deputy explained, since it was witnessed by 2 officers and a security camera with an opinion of its own. Nora picked me up, drove me home, slept on my couch without being asked. The next evening, she drove me back into town because there were 2 pieces of paper that could not wait for my wrist. The first was a petition for a domestic violence civil protection order. I qualified, the advocate explained, because our state's definition covers a parent you have lived with, no matter how long ago the living stopped. I filled it out left-handed, printing like a first grader, 18 years in one house condensed to the lines provided. The judge granted the temporary order the same day, with a full hearing set for the following week. The second paper was for the prosecutor, a tired, decent man with reading glasses on a chain. He told me the case was solid with or without me, but juries and judges hear daughters differently than they hear camera footage. He slid the witness form across the desk and said, "No pressure tonight, take it home." I signed it at his desk. There are signatures that change your name without changing a letter of it. I walked in as their daughter. I walked out as the state's witness. I understood in the parking lot under the sodium lights with my arm in a brace that there was no walking that back, ever. The voicemail came 4 days after the courthouse steps, while my father sat out on bond with a no-contact order and, I would learn later, a cot in Patricia's sewing room. It was my mother, and the warmth was back, the full bank teller sunrise, as if that morning on the courthouse steps had been a misunderstanding between strangers. "Claire, sweetheart, your father is sick over what happened. You know he would never hurt you." He tripped. Everyone could see it. But the county needs its little victories. Here is what we are going to do as a family. You will tell the prosecutor you will not testify. You will withdraw that awful order, which is humiliating your father in front of the whole church. And you will let the fee business go. We will call it even on everything. And then you will come home for Sunday dinner. I will make the roast. All of it forgiven. Honey, all of it. You will have your family again. I stood at my kitchen counter in the dark and played it 3 times. I want to be honest with you because a story like mine is worthless if I lie to you in the last act. That voicemail worked on me. Not the logic, the roast, the word home in her mouth, the exact pitch of it, tuned by 32 years of my wanting it. I had a brace on my wrist, stitches in my elbow, and some 10-year-old under my sternum whispering, "She said forgiven. We could just be done." That is the trick of it, friends. The forgiveness on offer was a product, and the price tag was everything true that had ever happened. I walked to the windowsill and picked up Ruth's teacup with my good hand, and I took her note out of the drawer and read it again, the crooked cursive holding steady. It was never your debt, sweetheart. Don't pay it twice. I saved the voicemail into the case file. Not for evidence. So I would never again wonder what her forgiveness retails for. The protection order hearing came first. I sat at a small table with a victim's advocate, raised my right hand awkwardly because of the brace, and told a magistrate about the ledger, the Friday envelopes, The 14 years of being watched like an account, the steps, the railing, the salt. My father's court-appointed lawyer asked careful questions. My father himself never looked up from his hands. 5 years, the magistrate wrote. No contact, no third-party messages, 500 feet. 6 weeks later came the trial for the assault itself. A bench trial, 1 judge, no jury, my mother in the second row in her church coat with her tissue. The prosecutor built it like a man laying brick, the deputies, the footage, the ER doctor with my x-rays and photographs. Then me. The defense lawyer did his job. I do not hate him for it. Isn't it true you had just taken a judgment against his wife that morning? Isn't it true there is money involved that you won? Isn't this order, this prosecution, this whole performance just the last chapter of getting even? And here is where something happened that I did not plan and could not have. I looked down the way you do when a question stings, and I saw the exhibits stacked at the prosecution table, my folders, my labels, my typed tabs, 14 years of receipts, and I finally saw them. Not caution. Not a bookkeeper's habit. A daughter's savings account of proof. Decades of deposits. All of it waiting for a day when the evidence would finally total enough to purchase what other children got free. I had been keeping her ledger all along from the other side. We are not asking, we are collecting. She had set it on my porch, and I had been collecting too, just in a different currency, and the account was never, ever going to fill. So I looked up and answered him, and my voice came out level.
No, sir.
It isn't revenge. It's the first true thing this family has ever put in writing. The defense called 1 witness. My mother. I think the lawyer regretted it inside of a minute. She began composed. Wife of 40 years. He's gentle. He stumbled. The ice. But composure was never the load-bearing wall in my mother. The ledger was, and the prosecutor only had to stand near it. On cross he asked softly whether she had told her husband that morning that I had taken everything from them. She straightened. Well, hadn't I? He asked whether she understood the civil case was over, that a judge had ruled the money was mine, the house was mine, that there was no debt. And my mother came apart. Not the way glass does. The way a dam does. One seam first, and then everything at once, in front of the flag and the docket and the whole indifferent machinery of the county. It is not over, she said, and her voice cracked out of its Sunday register. It will not be over until she pays what she owes. I gave that girl everything. And she turned in the witness box, past the lawyers, past the judge's warning, and found my face, and for the first time in my whole life, my mother spoke to me without any sweetness at all, which I suppose means honestly. After everything I put into you, after everything I paid, the judge was saying, ma'am, ma'am, and the gavel went, and the courtroom did its shocked quiet thing. Into that quiet the judge said the defendant was found guilty and asked, before sentencing, whether the victim wished to make a statement. I stood up with my arm in its brace. My mother was still in the box. 10 feet away, breathing hard. My father sat at the defense table with his head down, smaller than I had ever seen him. And friends, everything I might have said, 14 years of it, the whole banker's box of it, reduced the way sauce reduces down to what was actually true. And it was almost nothing. And it was everything. I said I was not there to collect. I said I had been paying on an invented debt since I was 14 years old, and I was done, and being done was not the same as getting even. Then I looked at her, only her. Love isn't a ledger, Mom, I said. I said it once, quietly. She flinched like I had raised my hand to her. The first honest flinch I ever saw on her face. Then I asked the judge for the thing neither of my parents will ever understand was mercy. No jail. Counseling. Probation. Whatever teaches a man where his own hands end. The sentence came down. 180 days suspended. 1 year of probation. Anger management. No contact. The protection order standing. The gavel fell. My father mouthed something at the table. It might have been my name. It might have been sorry. He did not finish it, whatever it was. I walked past the second row on my way out, and my mother turned her face away from me, and it did not take anything from me on its way past. That was new. That was the whole war right there, ending in a coat aisle in municipal court, her silence finally arriving at an address where it could not charge interest. The hallway outside the courtroom had wooden benches worn pale, and on one of them sat my cousin.